Hey everybody. So I had every intention of actually starting a dive into covert narcissism at the request of a viewer, Maggie Marie, um, and I'm gonna um, I'm gonna get to that. Don't let me forget, because I will. Because I literally have ADHD. Um, I've been up all night. I haven't slept for a number of reasons. The Omicron variant of COVID hit very close to home yesterday, so it's already here in Houston, Texas. My old college roommate who lives down the road from me contracted it, and we spent a little time around them over the Thanksgiving holidays before actual Thanksgiving Day. And it was a brief visit. And then on Thanksgiving Day, he got symptomatic, and now his 4-year-old son, he's got two children, two sons, 4 and 5 years old. Um, the older one, sorry, not the youngest, the older one, tested positive, and so did he. Uh, his wife is vaccinated. He is not. Neither of their sons are vaccinated, so um, I'm kind of concerned about that. Me, if y'all haven't already figured it out, I've got an identity crisis when it comes to COVID because I got my booster yesterday. My shoulder hurts like hell. And then after my booster, I went and I took him enough hydroxychloroquine to get him through until he sees a doctor. Um, why? Because I believe that there's more than one way to get through the pandemic. And it doesn't really matter what I think or believe. I help people in whatever ways I can. He wants it. It's not going, the worst case scenario, it does nothing, right? So at the worst possible outcome is that it changes nothing for his discourse, right? So in any case, been up all night worrying about him. But then I saw this trailer for Alec Baldwin uh, advertising his interview over his accidental shooting of Hyelaine Hutchins, however you say her name, Miss Hutchins, I'll just call her. Um, and you guys know that I look at body language and stuff like that, and I saw some things that really caught my eye. The full interviews tonight. He gave an hour and 20-minute long interview with George Stephanopoulos, and uh, the whole situation just doesn't strike me as smart. Um, and so, full disclosure, some of you, I think most of you know, some of y'all don't. So I'm a native Texan, I'm native son of Texas, 41 years old, lived in Texas my whole life. So of course I'm white. Of course I'm conservative. Of course I support the Second Amendment. Of course I have guns. Of course I support self-defense. However, I'm not really stubborn in my views. I try to be objective, right? Because you have to consider multiple perspectives and really tunnel down to the truth. So I have some, what we'd say, identity crisis beliefs as a conservative, white, southerner, that gun-toting white boy, right? Um, and I'll get into all of that. Um, so um, that's just to sort of set the tone for the next few days, so y'all will understand kind of sort of my bias as I'm looking at Mr. Baldwin and Miss Hutchins, right? Um, I noticed some contradictory body language in this trailer. Um, so the details of this accident. He was sitting in a church pew. He was going to do a cross draw with a revolver, and they weren't actually filming yet. They were shorthanded on camera crew that day, and so Miss Hutchins was in front of him, and they were saying, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to look this way. I'm going to look that way, and then I'm going to do my cross draw, and then I'm going to pull the gun out, and I'm going to point it at the camera, and that'll be it. And as he's sitting there talking, and bang, the revolver just goes off, shoots her in the stomach, travels through her, hits the movie director in the shoulder, and unfortunately, she did not survive this accident. And for what I'm seeing in the body language, I know not everybody grew up with guns. And you don't have to support guns, and I'm not going to try and convince you one way or the other. The point of it is, I just want you to understand, for those who are not deeply familiar with handguns, pistols, single action, double action, revolvers, safeties, decocking mechanisms, and things of that nature. I just kind of want to give y'all an overview. And so I'm actually going to, I've got two of my handguns here, and I'm going to use them as prop guns so y'all can sort of understand. So first of all, I think the biggest and best explanation for the accident was that he's just ignorant of guns. He's unfamiliar with guns. He does not respect guns. That is almost always how these accidents occur. Every accidental shooting, you can say just about every accidental shooting that's not related to dropping a gun or like a mechanical malfunction, like when somebody has a gun in their hand and they accidentally shoot somebody, it is almost always for one of two reasons. There's plenty of reasons, but overwhelmingly it's because, number one, out of habit, when you pick up a gun, your finger likes to go right in where the trigger is because, not surprisingly, that's how the gun is designed. But also, people get shot because somebody mistakenly believes a gun is unloaded. And so this is my personal PSA, public service announcement, not personal, right? Public service announcement. There is no such thing as an unloaded gun ever. Unloaded guns do not exist, right? A gun is never unloaded. What an unloaded gun is it's a belief. And I cannot stress that enough. Guns are always loaded, and an unloaded gun is a belief, okay? And I say this because guns there's so much variety in the world of guns that it is easy, it is very, very easy to take two similar guns and mistakenly believe one is unloaded when in fact it is still loaded. So that is why you should they're always loaded. And if you live your life believing that any gun is loaded and that it is impossible to ever be unloaded, you will always treat that gun with the amount of respect that it deserves and requires one to have, okay? The gun used was a revolver. If you don't know what that is, I'm sure you've all heard of Russian roulette, where they put one bullet in the gun and they spin this little spinny thing on the gun, and then they put it to their head and they pull the trigger and it either goes click, right, or it goes bang, right? So that's revolver. Those are the most dangerous handguns out there, not just for the person that it's pointed at, but for the actual shooter. For several reasons. Number one, that little spinny thing. And there's a Mythbusters episode. Look at Mythbusters and revolvers. A revolver, when you hold the revolver, if you hold it wrong, it can actually amputate your fingers when you shoot it, because that little spinny thing has a tiny little gap in between the part that spins and the barrel. When you shoot, the hot gases, the explosion comes flying out of that narrow gap like a valve, like the Dyson air blades, you know, that you dry your hands on and you look like a creep. Same principle, that air blade, that gap in revolver, it's like an air blade for a gunshot. And it's very, very sharp, focused blade of all things explosion. And so if you have, like in a self-defense situation, like a woman walking at night has a revolver in her purse and she struggles to try and get the revolver out, she's not going to say, give me 1 second while I get the proper grip, right? No, she's going to grab it, and however she's got it, she's going to pull it and she's going to try and shoot as quick as she can. And if her fingers are all not perfectly done right with that revolver, when she pulls the trigger, that Dyson Airblade effect, if it hits on a knuckle, it will blow your fingers off. So that's one thing about revolvers that you should know. The other thing is most guns have something called a safety. It's a specialized switch. You flip this switch, the gun does not operate at all. Different guns have different levels of safety. Some are very, very strict. Some are very loose. Revolvers have none. So there's no way to deactivate a revolver. So that's one of the reasons why they're one of the most dangerous types of handguns. However, they're also considered to be the most reliable in the sense that if you pull the trigger, it's going to shoot. If you touch the trigger, it's going to shoot, right? And so that's one reason why they're a popular, or that's one reason why they are selected for a given gun application is, doesn't matter what's going on, I want to be able to pull this trigger and know that it's going to shoot. Because other types of handguns, it's entirely possible to pull the trigger and it does not shoot. Either it's not chambered correctly, not loaded correctly, not cycled correctly, or it jams. Or the safety's on. There's a whole host of reasons, right? So the fact that someone like Alec Baldwin, who is outspoken against guns, who has a long history, a long, proud history of being anti-gun and not wanting to go near guns and wearing it as a badge that he doesn't do many movies with guns, does not bode well just at face value. Does not bode well to be handing him something like a revolver. I would not hand him a revolver full of blanks because I would actually be worried that he would end up injuring his fingers or losing a finger altogether would be my concern. So yeah, probably could not have picked a worse style of gun, but let's face it, back in the Wild Wild West, they didn't have Glocks. So there's that. I said I had a couple of guns to demonstrate. There is something known as single action and double action with guns. And I think most revolvers are double action, but I believe they can also be single action. And so what that is, I'm going to show double action first, actually. So this is a 9mm. It is unloaded. The magazine's out. You can see there's nothing in this gun. There's nothing in this barrel. What double action is this is the hammer. And when you pull the trigger, the hammer flies forward and hits the bullet cartridge, and that's what causes the explosion, makes the bullet go out. Now you notice as I'm sitting here messing with everything, it doesn't go forward, right? That's because the safety is on. This gun will not shoot. And it has what's called a decocking mechanism. And what that is, it's here on this switch. And what this allows you to do is safely move the hammer from this is the ready to fire position. So if you pull the trigger, it's going to, fire the gun. If you don't want it to be cocked out like that anymore, if you want to put it back in, that's always sort of a dangerous game, because in order to do that, you normally have to hold it down, pull the trigger, and then slowly let it in with your thumb. And if your thumb slips, your gun can go off. YouTube is full of videos like that. So this is one reason why I have this gun, is because it has what's known as a decocker, which is the switch is literally designed to safely move the hammer back to this position. And you saw the trigger move forward, right? And I'm about to get into that. So this is a double action gun. What that means is that this is, it can fire from a position like this where the trigger is forward and the hammer is forward, or it can also fire from the hammer back and the trigger back. And this is what's basically, for all intents and purposes, called a hair trigger, because the trigger is really, really sensitive when the hammer is back. It doesn't take much of a touch at all, and it will fire. The gun safety is on right now, right? So whenever it is uncocked, you have to squeeze, and I've got it in fire mode right now. The trigger is far forward. You have to squeeze a little bit, and you can see how the hammer starts to come back a little bit. So you have to squeeze really hard to pull the hammer all the way back, and it will fire. So it's called double action because it does not have to be cocked to be able to shoot. You can just pull the safety off and fire straight from an uncocked state. And the advantage of that is, if you're in a self-defense situation, you don't have to prepare the gun any more than necessary. So it's one less step between you and safety, right? But a double action gun, let me put this safe back on, when it's done like this with a hair trigger, and I think this is what happened with Mr. Baldwin here. My safety's on. When it is configured like this with the hammer back, you see how little the trigger moves? So it's very, very sensitive. And what I'm guessing is that whoever checked this revolver and was looking at it or handling it, I'm guessing the hammer was back like this, and they don't have a safety. And whenever he went to cross draw, what I'm thinking is that he got sloppy. I'm going to hold it like this. When he went to go grab it, it's just natural that your top finger goes in here. And if he's distracted talking to somebody, not paying attention to what he's doing, he's going to pull the gun out with his finger in there on the trigger. And so when he's saying, all right, you know, I'm going to reach over, I'm going to cross draw, point it at the camera. And by all accounts, as he's talking, the gun just suddenly went off unexpectedly. I'm about 99.5% sure that that is what happened. Just for a brief comparison, it's much less interesting. This is a single action handgun. This is my little baby. This can fit in any pocket, any purse, etc. Smaller caliber than a 9mm, smaller gun altogether. But the difference between a single action and a double action is it is always in the hammer up position, or hammer back. So it's always in hair trigger mode. Now this particular gun, you know, I said there's all kinds of safeties. This is a 9/11 replica, and I'm telling you this because everything about this gun works and operates with the safety on. The only thing this safety does is it physically locks this hammer so that no matter what happens, this hammer cannot move. The hammer will break before it ever strikes the bullet. So it's very safe, and the reason why I prefer this kind of gun is because with the safety on, everything operates just as it should, but it won't shoot. The only time it will shoot is if you pull down and then you shoot. But it has no other mode except for hair trigger mode, right? Single action revolvers, you can't really find them nowadays. I don't want to say something like they don't exist, because I'm sure they do. But basically, single action means that it can only be in hair trigger mode, right? So either this revolver was a double action with the hair trigger set, or it was a single action, and when he went to grab it, it went off. So sorry to have to talk about all of that stuff, but I think it's very important, because whenever you look at his body language and the way that his head is shaking no and nodding yes is absolutely relevant to how handguns like that operate. Because he says, I did not pull the trigger. Like, I did not pull the trigger. I did not squeeze the trigger, right? Something along those lines. Well, it's plenty possible to fire a gun just by, let me decock. So safety is on. If you pull the hammer back and let it go, that can shoot a gun, right? But he's saying that he did not pull the trigger, he did not squeeze the trigger, but his body language contradicts him. And this is all just an observation from this trailer promotion that they've put out for the interview. You better believe I'm going to be watching this interview intently, zoomed in, and I'm going to present it, because the last thing I'm going to leave y'all with this is just over the years and just seeing Alec Baldwin. I don't mean to speak ill of the guy, but I think he's a narcissistic sack of shit. The message he left on his daughter's voicemail just really says it all. And that's before you factor in any of his other well-documented shenanigans. This whole interview, he's going to end up hanging himself. Like, an hour and 20 minutes of talking while an investigation is still ongoing. There are prosecutors looking for evidence of criminal charges and criminal activity. A woman is dead. They've been investigating. The investigation's not complete. He hasn't been acquitted or anything. They haven't closed the case. And when we live in a country where everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, it is insanely egotistical and narcissistic to think that you can go and speak at length for an hour and 20 minutes and cooperate with an investigation with people who are literally looking for anything and everything to hang you on, and to think that you're going to come out unscathed. His brother Daniel released this asinine statement saying that because it was the armorer's job to secure the guns, and because somebody said cold gun, that absolutely acquits my brother of any wrongdoing. No, it doesn't. It does not. If you're holding a gun and the gun discharges while it is in your hand, that is a negligent discharge, and you are liable for any damages done by that negligent discharge. And that is something you should always remember. If you have a gun in your hand, you are responsible for everything that gun does. And if you don't want to be responsible for a stray bullet, put that gun down. George Clooney's on the record, and a whole lot of actors sounded off. When you look at the level of, there's Keanu Reeves there's all kinds of videos of Keanu Reeves doing special ops training and all kinds of gun training. There's a reason for that. Keanu's like seriously one of the most beautiful human beings, beautiful souls to ever walk the planet, and he does action movies. You think he wants to at all to take any chances of hurting anybody? No. Keanu's probably one of the least narcissistic people in Hollywood that I can think of. and he trains religiously and practices religiously so that he doesn't hurt anybody. And when you compare someone like Keanu Reeves with Alec Baldwin, who is the antithesis, it immediately becomes clear. So in any case, that's the mechanics that I think are underneath this. The one thing I'll say is that I hope it goes to a jury, and that's not to be persecutatory. That's not to persecute him. It's just that when somebody gets shot, injured, killed, when there's a victim, I think that the community and the victim's family have the God-given right to have the jury's voice speak for them, and either corroborate or exonerate. The community should have a say on that. Somebody died. Yeah, you didn't mean to kill someone, but you did, and it is your fault, either directly or indirectly, for your negligence and what you did not do when you clearly knew that you should. And that's just how I feel about it. I've seen people killed by negligence. I've seen people shot and injured by negligence. It's not something to be taken casually. Anyways, maybe I can do this in a shorter version. Whatever, I'm posting this. If you made it this far, congratulations, you're my hero. Let me know in the comments if you made it this far. And I'll see y'all on the next one.